we've covered the Klassiker. That was 2-2. Again, lots of goals, high drama. Our prediction, where we were out by a goal, well technically a result, because we did have Munich down as coming up trumps with a 2-1 win. Didn't finish that way, but again, credit to Dortmund for fighting their way back into the game. Now let's have a look. Let's have a look at Leverkusen. Yeah, that game was 0-0, which, yeah, interesting. I mean, we know that Union Berlin are street fighters. They will come into that on the back of a 4-game unbeaten streak, 2 wins in a row. Both games, interesting that they came from a goal down. They came from a goal down against Frankfurt to win 2-1. They came from a goal down against Freiburg to win 2-1. Hollerbach had scored 2-2, I recall. However, this is Leverkusen, right? Who've only lost 2 games at home all season. They were LATERKUSEN because they managed to win 1-0 away at Heidenheim in the previous game on match day 28. So we had this down as being a 3-1 home win. And I'm pretty sure that most of you would have assumed when you match the 2 teams up, and again, here's the lineups, right? If we have a look at the lineups. I'm not saying it's day and night, but arguably there's more quality in that Leverkusen team. Interesting that both have gone with 3 at the back. You know, Xabi Alonso would usually go with that, right? He'd either go 4-3-3, or he'd put Schick up front on his own, or he'd do a 4-2-3-1. You know, classic football manager, which is what Vincent Kompany does for Bayern Munich. 2 different managers, 2 different philosophies. Obviously worked for last season because Leverkusen won the Bundesliga. Xhaka is the linchpin in midfield. Frimpong out on the right, one of the fastest players in the Bundesliga. Grimaldo on the left. You know, 2 very effective wing backs. Palacios, well, we've called him out as a one to watch in previous shows. Alex Garcia, the Spaniard, again, you know, this a few weeks ago against Bochum, he was coming up with a couple of assists. Nathan Teller, ex-Burnley striker, that's interesting, right? Which, you know, previously had a relationship with Vincent Kompany, so that's fascinating. So 2 up front for a change. So even that, right? 2 up front. It feels like 2 up front with the quality in that team, the ability to, well, and they're obviously missing Florian Wirtz. I mean, that screams out straight away, right? Any team would miss Florian Wirtz, by the way. But someone with that playmaking ability, the ability to find a... Just 1 second. The ability to find a... It's live, right? What do you expect? You know, it'll be all right in the night, they say. That just proves that, you know... Well, that might have been his agent ringing me to say, just call out Florian Wirtz. He's not going to Munich, or is he? We don't know, do we? We don't know. Any team would miss that level of playmaking ability. But you've got options in midfield, right? You've got Palacios and you've got Garcia, 2 guys that can sort of, you know, do their best to compensate, and are against a team who's been set up in a way by Stefan Baumgart. You know, they're away from home against a tough opposition. 1 guy up front, 3 at the back. We'll pack out the midfield. We'll try and do what we can to put a stranglehold on people like Garcia and Palacios. You know, maybe they've put someone, maybe Rani Khedira, younger brother of ex-Galactico Sami Khedira. You know, maybe get him to tight mark and wind up Granit Xhaka, because as we know from his time, Gonzo's telling me from his time at Arsenal, he used to get wound up pretty easy. You know, he used to pick up a yellow card, like most people do, you know, picking up cards on a milestone. Well, he used to pick up a lot of cards, right? He used to get wound up. So maybe that was the tactic. You know, 3 at the back, fill out the midfield, keep out the attacking threat from Leverkusen. Obviously, you have the likes of Querfeld and Leitao, man marking Schick and Tello, and see what happens. And it looks for the world that you know, credit to Stefan Baumgart, and that's what happened, right? Because there's the tell, right? Excuse me. The telltale sign is the 0-0. And if we look at the stats, you know, it doesn't matter about the XG. Well, it does, but you know, we're not going to go down that, get stuck in those weeds. But Leverkusen had 13 shots, only 4 on target. Yes, look at that, 68% of the possession. So, as you would expect, a bit like Munich at home, they're one of the highest. I think it's Munich, Leverkusen, Dortmund, 3 teams that really score highly in the percentile in terms of having 60 plus possession at home. Leverkusen have done that. Look at that pass accuracy. We've got 704 passes versus 240, and I bet if I was to look at another website, it would give me an indication of an average, maybe a 6 or 7 pass streak for Leverkusen. So it looks like they were doing everything they could. Similar to Dortmund outrunning Munich, well, the same things happened here, and it's not a surprise again, because I imagine that midfield 3 here, well, Habera, Khedira, that rhymes, doesn't it? They got 2 sort of attacking-ish type players that are doing a lot of the ground further up the pitch. But yeah, I imagine that quartet 4 there, Schaefer, Skarke, Khedira and Habera, they're probably doing a lot of running to try and keep up with all the passing moves that Leverkusen were bringing to the party. Who do they bring on as a sub? Oh, it's interesting that he keeps bringing Holler back off the bench. He didn't start him, treating him very much like an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, right? Like a super sub. So yeah, and actually that's another clean sheet for Renault. So what's that now? That must be. Let's have a. Yeah, we can. Let me check that one out. Here. So that is now. That's 8 clean sheets for Frederic Renault. Interesting that 4 of those have come on the road. That's fascinating. Yeah. Good work. Good work, Rees. Oh, I thought it was Frederick. I was calling Frederick. No. Good work there. Yeah, good work, Stefan Baumgart. Managing to lock Leverkusen up into a 0-0. Some of the distances, like we say, that's 2 of the 4 that were in the midfield. Yeah, fascinating. All right, Hincapi won most of his duels, but I'm not surprised, right? Because that's a case of, again, if I could see a full stat breakdown, there'd be a lot of long balls over the top, aiming for the likes of Andras Ilic, and then Hollerbach who's come on for him. So Hincapi, Jonathan Tah and Tapsoka, they're going to have to do what they can to clear up the danger, and it looks like they did that. But they couldn't find a way past that very compact Union Berlin defence. Well done. Disappointing because, again, our prediction was that Bayern were going to win it 3-1, which would put a flag in the ground. It would send a message out to Munich, which is, hey, we're keeping up with you toe-to-toe, because that would have reduced the gap down to 3 points. As it was, they don't win. It's a stalemate. And then in that later game, if you look at, again, where's it gone? Here, look. 70 minutes, 2-1 Munich. I'm sure that Xabi and his players are thinking, we've messed up here. And it happened a few weeks ago, if you remember, on the same weekend where Munich was celebrating their 125th anniversary, that big party at the Allianz. Bochum turned up and thought, what's all this about, a party? We're not just going to have a party bag and some cake, we're going to take 3 points back with us, right? So Bochum turned up, crashed that party, won the game 3-2, so Munich dropped points, but on the same day, Werder Bremen turned up at the Bayer Arena and won 2-0. Romano Schmidt, was it Ollie Bate with the other goal, I believe? Or maybe it was Jan Stark. I could probably check. Anyway, the point is, it just seems to be fate now that on the same day Munich drop points, Leverkusen do the same. Are we going to get a repeat of the 22-23 season? That went all the way down, literally, not just to the last game and the last day, but for pretty much the last kick of the ball. Is it going to be the same this season? Well, arguably it can't go to the last game, can it? Because if it's... Or could it? I suppose it could, right? If it's still a 3-point gap on the last day of the season, Munich draw or drop points and Leverkusen win, then they could pinch it right at the death. That's football, right? But as it is, the football gods, the higher spirits, the higher power, fate, he's making it an interesting run-in with 5 games to go. And again, we'll take another look at the table, but you know the situation. Yeah, as it stands right now, before the Easter games, it's a 6-point gap. Leverkusen will look at that as points dropped in a game where they should have won at home. We'll take another break. We'll come back. We'll look at the remaining games from match day 29. Go and get yourself another drink, or just have a walk around, or go and teach yourself German. Let's take a look at Hoffenheim, who were playing at home against Mainz. Let's take a look at that one. So, this game completely threw us out. Our prediction was that Mainz would turn up and win this one. Did we say? I'm sure we said 3-1. Yeah. Our prediction is that Mainz would turn up and win 3-1. And that's because there were 3... Yeah, they hadn't won in 3. So the last few games go into this one. Mainz had drawn 2-2, lost 3-1. And their last game they'd drawn 1-1 with Holstein Kiel. Another game where we predicted that Mainz were going to wipe the floor with Kiel and win 4-0. And they had to come from behind for a draw. And Hoffenheim, they won this run of, I think it was 35 or 36 games at home without a clean sheet. So you thought, well, the second best team away in terms of goals in the Bundesliga was Mainz, because they'd scored 27 times away from home. All right, conceded a few on the road, conceded 21, but that's probably about par. That's versus a Hoffenheim team, again, that have got a -6 goal difference at home, and again haven't kept a clean sheet since the calendar year 2023, right? So it just felt like Mainz would come in again. If you look at if we come back in and judge it by the table, right? So obviously this is after the Lord Mayor's show. This is live. It's after the weekend, but going into that game, Mainz are in 4th, which is the last Champions League spot up for grabs in the Bundesliga. 4 teams obviously go through. The winner, 2nd place, 3rd, 4th. Forget the top 2, right? This is real. With 5 games to go for a team like Mainz and for Leipzig and Frankfurt and possibly Freiburg. This is a race now to finish 3rd. And going into this weekend of match day 29, it were 2 teams, Frankfurt and Mainz, who've been slugging it out for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row as to who was going to finish 3rd, who was going to finish 4th. It's just a bit of a shock. Yeah, honestly, like a real shock that, for a team that haven't kept a clean sheet at home, haven't scored that many times, scored with Andre Kramaric, right? After 4 minutes. Let's have a look at the lineup, just so we can see. So what was fascinating is that captain Johnny Bergkamp didn't start up front. In fact, he wasn't even on the bench. Look, Johnny Bergkamp was absent in this one. Nelson Viper, again, good football manager pick up there. If you can sign him for a respectable amount early on, he'll bag you goals as he grows, as he develops. So they turn up with a 3 at the back, which they have done in many games this season. Anthony Cassie, the Frenchman, on one side, Moani on the other. Hard-working, I want to watch was Kaisho Sano, alongside Lee. And then Paul Nebel, kind of playing behind Nelson Viper, right? So they've come away from home 3 at the back. I guess it's very traditional as a formation in Germany, people playing 3 at the back. Hoffenheim, well, they're at home, they've done the same thing. Tabakovic up front rather than Gift Orban, who was previously one of our ones to watch, but as you can see, he was on the bench, actually didn't even come on as sub. And it's our one to watch for Hoffenheim was Bazuman Toure, or Baz Toure, the Ivorian 19-year-old attacking midfielder, playing on the right. And yeah, he he came up with the assist. In fact, Toure provided both assists for that brace from Kramaric. Just fascinating. Is that a red card then to Paul Nebel at the end? Wow. Okay. Naughty boy. There you go. There's the stats for the game. I mean, one shot on target. I mean, that's a Mainz team that was sorely missing their bagsman. You know, is it 15 goals up to this point in the season? Let me just double check that, because I'm pretty sure he has. Yeah, 15 goals, 2 assists up to this point. Not in the team. You know, scored 27 times away from home. And they were missing the main guy, right? And that was telling, because then he managed to put in one shot on target in a whole of 95 minutes. That Paul Nebel red card is, the game's already finished by that point, right? In fact, you could argue the game was already over at half time. Interesting, that one. And then Hoffenheim break their streak. Yeah, they can finally get their monkey off the back. They can now say, right, from this point onwards, we start again. We try and keep a clean sheet for next week. Let's just double check that. See what the incident was. Oh, it was a second yellow card, right? So he's either been mouthing off, or maybe he's left a bit on somebody. Look at that, Basaman Toure, fastest man in the game, 35.28 kilometers per hour. Wow. There you go. Kaisho Sano is our one to watch in the middle, handling the pressure. 10 times under pressure, rose to the occasion. But sadly, couldn't help his team find their way back into the game. And they lose 2-0. We have a look at the impact on the table. So Mainz, as it is, dropped down from 4th into 5th. They're still in the European spot, which is Europa League. That's Thursday night football. The premium end of the Thursday night football. Conference League, Europa League. As for Hoffenheim, well, they remain in 14th. Oh, of course, because St. Pauli, we'll cover St. Pauli next, because that's interesting. Yeah. So Hoffenheim remain in 14th on 30 points. Arguably safe for another season, because it really seems like, it seems like even St. Pauli might be breathing a little bit easier after a win in match day 29. But there you go. Hoffenheim in 14th. There's a gap of 4 points to them and Union Berlin in 13th. At the top of the table, Mainz, look at that. See, 46 points, which is only 2 off Leipzig. Again, with 5 games to go. If Leipzig drop points and Mainz keep on winning. And let's just have a look to see what their fixtures are like. Right, so we can have a look and we can see, look. Mainz fixtures for the rest of the season. Next weekend they play Wolfsburg. They are a team that's now lost 4 on the spin and conceded 6 goals in those 4 games. Then they've got to go away to Munich. They've got to play Frankfurt. So that's tasty, right? So take out Munich. They've got to play... Wow. So Mainz have got to play the top 2 sides, a side that's in 3rd and one side that's scrapping for their lives at the bottom of the table, and Wolfsburg, right? So that's an interesting 5 set of games to go, which could make or break Mainz's run. Don't forget, this is a Mainz team that stayed up because they scored a last-minute goal last season, right? And Bo Henriksen came in, arguably has done wonders to turn the mentality of the team around. You know, got them winning, got them believing, got them scoring. Second highest scores away from home in the Bundesliga. Yeah, job well done. Faltered of late, like I say. I've just got to check something that, you know. So Mainz now, they haven't won in 5 with that loss. Yeah. So the last 5 games now, their form for Mainz is 1 win, 2 draws, 2 losses. So they haven't won in 5 games. Before that last set of 5, they'd won 4 in a row, beating Heidenheim, St. Pauli, Leipzig, Gladbach. So yeah, it's tailing off. What is that? It feels to me like that's a team that's feeling the pressure of being that high up in the table. Again, it happened last year to Augsburg. Augsburg were in a similar position to Mainz and Freiburg, and they dropped off a cliff. Last season, to see the business end of the season, Augsburg lost 5 of their last 6 games. And there's a danger that a team like Mainz and Freiburg, the same pattern could happen to them. Which, again, it's all about experience, right? It's like me talking to you now and trying to do this as a live stream rather than doing it as a video which is scripted within an inch of its life. It's all new. It's all an experiment. Is it going to work? But we're going to get better over time. And, next season, they can take all that learning and think, right, okay, we're in this position before. Experience teaches us this is the game management. This is how you see a game out. This is how we go on a streak that enables us to finish high up the table. Obviously, with a couple of extra signings and some different training patterns and patterns of playing a game under the supervision of the right manager. That's tactics, isn't it? And that's number one. That's how you set a team up for success. As it stands, though, Mainz haven't had success because they're not had a win in 5 games. As for Hoffenheim, they are... previously they'd lost to Leipzig 3-1. So that's their first win in 6. First win in 6 games. So our prediction for this game was that Holstein Kiel would win it 1-0 on the basis that both sides are going to be up for this game because, they're scrapping for their lives, effectively. It's tight down the bottom of the Bundesliga table. If we just come back 1 second and start the narrative here. Look, see? What's that? 9, 10, 11. So 11 points separate the two sides. There's actually 11 points between the bottom 4, which is a bigger part of the narrative. St. Pauli don't score many goals, home or away. In fact, they've scored 9 at home at the Michelin Star. Actually, it was 8 before they got that last 85th minute equaliser against Gladbach on match day 28. So they scored 9 at home and more away from home. It was 15 coming into this game. Whereas Holstein Kiel, in contrast, they scored 19 at home, but they've shipped 36 goals. So it was an interesting case of 2 leaky defences. However, Holstein Kiel, they tend to touch the ball a lot at home. There are people like Lewis Holtby in the middle of the pitch, and I want to watch Armin Zigovic, the Bosnia and Herzegovina international in the attacking midfielder. Those sort of people tend to touch the ball, so they're more comfortable. So, 6 pointers form kind of a bit like the Klassiker. Not that you would ever find any any Bundesliga analysts mentioning those 2 games in the same breath, but in the context that form goes out the window because there's so much riding on that game, really. So our prediction was that Kiel would win it 1-0. Again, St. Pauli just struggle. They score more away from home. But their last win on the road, by the way, was all the way back in match day 18, and that was against Heidenheim, who, again, if we look at the table, well, at that point, Heidenheim were in 17th, but they're currently in 16th. So, yeah, it's really bleak for those teams down the bottom. And look at that. Out of nowhere, we get a surprise because St. Pauli win the game 2-1 with a very late goal. If we look at the lineups, as we've established, it's very classical for German teams to play 3 at the back. Very Italian, actually, isn't it, I suppose? Culturally, they're 2 nations that are very far apart in terms of their cuisine and their fashion, their lust for life. But in terms of how they've set up these games, as you can see, Kiel have gone for a 3-5-2, and yet St. Pauli have gone for a 3-4-3. But there's still that rock of 3 at the back. All right, the 3 technically for St. Pauli it's a 5 at the back because Treyu and Saliakis are treated as wing backs. Elias Sad. Interesting that Sad and Daniel Sinani, the guy from Luxembourg, the striker from Luxembourg, they've swapped because usually Elias Sad would be up front on his own. He's been pushed out to the left, and Dafo Afolainen, ex-Bolton Wanderers, he was our one to watch for the game, so he's been pushed out. Yeah, he came on as a sub. He's been treated very similar to how Stefan Baumgart treats Benedikt Hollerbach at Union Berlin. Alexander Blessing treating Afolainen as a super sub, but he started him in this game. And for Holstein Kiel, our previous one to watch was Alexander Bernhardsen, who can play either as an attacking midfielder, inside forward on the right, but he was up front with Machino, the Japanese striker. And our one to watch this game was Jigovic, like I say. And yeah, out of nowhere, we didn't really see that coming. I mean, Alexander Bernhardsen, he scored an absolute beauty for the go-ahead goal in the previous week against Mainz. I mean, Robert Zentner in goal for Mainz on that day was having a worldie. He was like everything. He was pulling off a string of like world-class saves. So it needed a world-class goal to beat him, and that's what happened on that game. So Bernhardsen's now scored 2 in 2. Daniel Sinani has been a previous one to watch of ours. He brings St. Pauli back into the game. That goal came from a throw-in on the left. He's on the outside of the inside box. Low shot, bottom right-hand corner. That's to pull the game back to 1-1. And then, yeah, as we can see at the death, he won't want reminding of that, but it's an own goal to win it. Yeah. Max Gershwil. Yeah, that's a real stinker, isn't it? That Max Gershwin coming on played as a left-sided midfielder or wing-back, I suppose, but in this game he was played as a defensive left midfielder, scores the own goal. What a way to lose a game, eh? 92 minutes. Oof, that's cruel. Excuse my stomach there. If we look at the stats, that's an interesting story, right? So St. Pauli have come away from home. They'd only scored, what do we say? They'd only scored 14 away from home up until that point, and have come and had 6 shots on target and scored twice. Technically scored once because the other one was an own goal, but there was pressure applied to the goal to produce it. Passing, yeah, I'm not surprised that the home side have sort of edged that 53%. I'm not surprised that with Kiel again, because they do like and they are comfortable on the ball. 458 passes, 80% pass completion rate. Pretty close in terms of distances run. More sprints going off for Kiel. We can get an indication of that, can't we? Because it'll tell us. Look, Jackson Irvine, the Socceroo captain for St. Pauli. He's usually clocking up about 11.8, 12.2 Ks distance run per game. So he covers a lot of run. Not surprised that Dafo was the fastest person on the pitch, because he's usually bombing up and down that wing. He's young, he's got a lot of vibrancy, a lot of energy. Who was this? Well, technically no assists, right? Because that second one was an own goal. And Jigovic was the assist for the Bernhardsen goal. So there you are. So we've got the people who've called out as the ones to watch. They've been involved in the action. We got the prediction wrong because we were convinced that Kiel were going to win 1-0 at home. St. Pauli have surprised all of us. And as we can see, the impact on the table, well, Kiel are still stuck on the bottom on 18 points. St. Pauli, well, that 3 points puts more of a gap between them and Frank Smith's Heidenheim side. They're with only a point now of Hoffenheim in 14th. Again, there's no European competitions to play for, but that 16th place, as you know, is the relegation playoff. So I suppose if Heidenheim finished there, Frank Smith would be like, yeah, that'll do for us, because they would play whoever finishes third in the Zweite Bundesliga for that one-off playoff game. St. Pauli look to be clear. Let's just have a look at who they've got next. So St. Pauli have to travel to... Wow, they don't. They're hosting Leverkusen. Yeah. So again, all right, St. Pauli are fourth from bottom, but they still need the points to ensure. Yeah, Alexander Blessing still needs the points to ensure their survival, just to give themselves enough breathing space. But that's a big game, right? That's a big game when Leverkusen come to town. And again, Leverkusen will need the win because they'll need to keep up with Munich, regardless of how they get on in their fixture. And then they've got to go away to Bremen, playing Stuttgart at home, away to Frankfurt, who again will be slugging it out between themselves, Freiburg and Mainz, possibly Gladbach as well for a Champions League spot. And then look at that. They've rounded out the season with a game home tie at Bochum. And if we look at Holstein Kiel, who have they got to play? Next out, Holstein Kiel on their way to Leipzig. Again, they're pushing for Champions League because they want to keep that record going. Leipzig have been in the Champions League for 6 years in a row. And of course, they've got a new manager, the Hungarian Zsolt Löw, who reports into Jürgen Klopp. Now, both of those big characters are going to want Leipzig in the Champions League for a 7th consecutive year. So, yeah, and actually Löw might get the job on a permanent basis if he manages to qualify for the Champions League. So that's a big one. Gladbach, again, as we've already talked about there, they're fighting for European football. They want Champions League football. Augsburg have dropped off. Where are they quickly in the table? Augsburg are in 10th. At one point, they were in 6th. It feels like their European dreams are fading as well, which is a real shame. But back to Kiel. Like we say, they've got Leipzig away, Gladbach home, travel to Augsburg, home to Freiburg, and away to Dortmund. So, yeah, interesting, isn't it? How the teams at the bottom could shape those that are pushing for aspirations at the top half. I'm going to talk about Augsburg on the road to VfL Bochum. Bochum have got a great fanboy in Ryan Rice from his Football Paradise channel. He won't enjoy this one. No, this would be X-rated. I think he was there actually, yeah, because he does travel. He does travel around Germany to watch Bochum, a team that he fell in love with. VfL, well, that's the team that plays the rock song at the start of the game. One of their fans is a famous 80s rock star, or I have to figure out his name next time. But I just checked, by the way. Pat Nevin played. Of course, he played for Chelsea. He played for Chelsea and Everton. Never played for either of the two Glasgow teams. He was born in Glasgow. That's why I said Celtic, because I was convinced that he'd played for the Green and White Hoops because he was born up there. But no, he did play for Motherwell and Kilmarnock. But yeah, Pat Nevin of Thursday Night Football on Channel 5 might be covering Freiburg. I mean, Julian Schuster will be open, so. Anyway, Bochum or Augsburg, this game, we came into it feeling that both of these sides were going to cancel each other out. And for an hour, we were spot on. We predicted 1-1, and like I say, for an hour it was going good. Let's have a look how the two teams set up first, so you can get an idea. So, again, 3 at the back for each. Bernardo Ordetz Uman, Maxi Vitek, Alexander Paslak. Side note, friend of mine, another YouTuber, Northern Pilgrim number 1. Jamie's got a career save on the go on FM. He streams usually Thursday and a Sunday between 9 and midnight BST. And he's managing West Ham at the minute. He's got Paslak in the side, and I was like, "Oh, I'm excited because Paslak, he plays. Felix Paslak plays in the Bundesliga. Of course, there's no back button. I need to figure that one out. Anyway, there you go. So Paslick and Tom Krause, Sissoko in the midfield. What a resilient player he is. And then the Greek, Masouras up front with the big man Philip Hoffmann. And the away team, set up in a 3-4-3. Big Jeff Gulaway at the back. Slotterbeck, Kevin, elder brother of Nico. Unfortunately, he's currently out injured, and Nico from Dortmund's going to be missing the rest of the season. Hope he makes a quick recovery. Matt Seamer, who was credited with the own goal in the Bavarian derby. That was Augsburg's last game. They were 1-0 up in that, by the way. 1-0 up against Munich at home. Dimitri Janilus with a rocket of a goal past Erbig on the 28th minute mark. They lost that game 3-1, but yeah, it looked like Leroy Sané had scored his 10th of the season, but it was actually credited to Krislan Matsimo as an own goal. So 3-4, Frank Onyeki, Jakic, Marius Wolf on the wide right, Giannis on the left, Alex, Claude, Maurice, who was our one to watch this game, alongside the Finn, Fredrik Jensen, and then Samuel Essender up front. And like I say, Essender, well, he put Augsburg ahead. That was an assist from Alexei Claude Maurice. That's a good one. Clap that one in. Felix Passlack then equalises on the hour mark. That's a setup, or technically an assist from Philip Hoffmann. That's his second of the season. Passlack with the goal. That's Passlack's first goal of the season. That was at 1-1. Then there's a red card on 80 minutes to Arnie Meyer. That's his first red. Not many red cards in the Bundesliga this season. Both sides make a double switch. And then in the 90th minute, Philip Tietz sets up Philip Tietz. Oh, he came on as a sub. I was going to say, I didn't see his name in the starting lineup. He came on for a sender and played up top. He sets up Mert Kuma, also off the bench. Mert Kuma, the Turkish 19-year-old, that's his second goal of the season, and they win it late on. Wow. There you go. Augsburg win 2-1 away. Look at the stats. 5 on target versus 8 for the home team. Dead level in terms of possession. Quite an even game. Pretty even in terms of distances covered per kilometre and number of sprints. Augsburg putting in more tackles. Big Jeff, he's turned up, hasn't he, in that game? Big Jeff alongside Matisma and Slotterbeck, and I can tell you a bit more on that actually. More of those tackles were coming in from, wow, Sissoko from the home team. He put in three of his, and then it's Matt Seamer with 3. Jeff, yeah, so him and Big Jeff, that's 5 successful tackles out of 14 for the away side. And it's a smash and grab, and they win the game 2-1. And we've got egg on our face with another loss. What's the impact on the table? Let's have a look at that then. So let's have a look for Augsburg. So that lifts them up from 11th into 10th. They go above Stuttgart. Stuttgart lost. We'll cover that one soon. Augsburg on 42 points. So they're only 3 points off Freiburg. Again, Augsburg last season were in a similar place, pushing for European football, and so lost 5 out of the last 6 games and just dropped off. Let's have a look at Augsburg. Who have they got left to play? So next up, they host Frankfurt again. So as a team pushing to get into Europe, this is a team that's currently in the Champions League spots, and then they have to travel to Leverkusen, could have an impact on the title. Away at Kiel, could have an impact on the bottom. Stuttgart are chasing like Augsburg because they've just gone above them, and then Union Berlin, well, that could be a bit of a dead rubber. Although you never know, for Augsburg it could mean everything, because like I said, they're pushing to be featured in Europe. Whereas we can see the impact for Bochum. Sorry, yeah. For Bochum then, they're in 17th. So there's only 2 points between themselves and Kiel. Kiel with that loss, as we talked about. Kiel losing 2-1 at home to St. Pauli. Yeah, So Bochum are 2 points above Kiel, 2 points behind Heidenheim, who we haven't covered that game yet, but we will because they were away at the Deutsche Bank Park playing Frankfurt. Dino Topmüller's side, who are also, like we said, also pushing to hold on to that coveted third place. Forget about 1 and 2 because that's obviously going to be between now and the end of the season. It's Munich and Leverkusen vying for the title, and it's anything from third downwards. So, yeah, interesting times. Who have Bochum got left to play? Let's have a look at their fixtures. So next up, they're hosting the Street Fighters Union Berlin. So no, they're away at Bremen. Then they're hosting the Street Fighters of Union Berlin. Away at Heidenheim, another Sek-Punkter. Playing Mainz, could impact their Champions League ambitions. And then St. Pauli. Whoa, that's a tasty one to finish. Wow. The football gods are really teeing this one up to be an interesting end of the season at both top and bottom ends.